we'll talk about the two master strategies, my personal favorite of paying off my house, and I'm using one of them for my own primary residence. So what this means is on the $695,000 mortgage, you're almost paying 60 to 80% more in interest. The first one, monthly to bi-weekly payments, I do not like. And again, you'll see that our money has grown by a lot more than the interest savings that you have if you put this $500 per month every single month into your mortgage. I really feel that people complicate real estate a lot. You don't have to complicate real estate. Should you pay off your mortgage? If yes, then when and how much? Let's find out in today's video. So let's get started. So in today's video, we'll be talking about four things. One is the mortgage maths, how mortgage actually works, how interest works. Then we'll talk about should you pay off your mortgage or invest that money into S&P 500 or something else. We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about why prepay, when and how much. And then finally, we'll talk about the two master strategies, my personal favorite of paying off my house, and I'm using one of them for my own primary residence. Now, before I talk about the mortgage maths and paying your mortgage off, I want to give a disclaimer that this video is only for people who have their primary homes, and you should never pay off your mortgage on an investment property before time. And the reason is that on investment properties, when you are paying a mortgage, the interest on that mortgage is tax deductible, which is not the case in your primary home, and therefore it's an expense. So the best way to counter the high interest on your investment property is to buy a cash flow investment where the tenant pays for the interest and not you. And in 25 to 30 years, you are mortgage free on that property, and then you have passive income for your retirement. So talking about primary homes, let's do the mortgage maths. Let's say you are purchasing a property for yourself to live in for $750,000. You do a 10% down payment. I'm taking a 4% interest rate. I know right now the interest rates are higher, but if you look at the 25-year average of interest rates, it's less than 4%. So I'm taking 4% interest rate because we are looking at long term when we are doing the mortgage maths. Then we take a 25-year amortization. Sometimes people get 30-year amortizations when they do a 20% down. But for this example, because we are doing a less than 20% down, let's take 25-year amortization. And the loan amount in this case, including the mortgage insurance, will be about $695,000. The monthly payment will come out to about $3,661. This is at a 4% interest rate. And your overall interest that you pay across 25 years at a 4% interest will be over $400,000. So what this means is on the $695,000 mortgage, you're almost paying 60 to 80% more in interest. While that sounds crazy, that is the reality. Now looking at this number, of course, you might be asking, then why do we take a mortgage? Why do we even buy a house? And the reason is that if you do the 25-year math, and I'll link the video in the description below, if you rent versus buy, in about 10 to 15 years, you'll see that you are paying a lot in rent, and that's an expense. And in 10 to 15 years, even if you are paying interest, your cost of owning a home long term is a lot lower than renting it long term. So for short term, renting is good, which is what I talked about in that video. But long term, owning is always better, even if you are paying so much interest. So do remember this $400,000 number, because in today's presentation, we'll be talking about how to minimize this number without breaking your bank. Now, when it comes to mortgage, one of the things that we need to understand is prepayments. Most banks will allow you to prepay 15% of your outstanding balance every single year. Now, there are a couple of banks that allow 20%. There is one blue bank which allows only 10%, and that's why I don't like to keep my mortgage with that bank. But most banks would be 15% plus, which basically means if you have $1 million in mortgage, 15% of that is $150,000. So in your first year, you can make a prepayment of up to $150,000. Of course, it's not possible for everyone unless you get new money in. But this is one clause that you should always keep in mind when you're taking a mortgage. Now, there are three ways to pay down this mortgage as part of the prepayment clause. The first one is you can change your payments from monthly to bi-weekly, and this allows you to make an entire 1 month worth of payment additional over the course of the year. And if you do that every year, you would save about 3 to 4 years on your mortgage and about $100,000 in interest. The second way to prepay the mortgage is increase the monthly payment by up to 15%. Or in some mortgages, you can actually double your payments as well. And this way, you can also reduce the amount of interest that you pay on the mortgage long term and be mortgage free a lot earlier than 25 years. And the third way to do the prepayments is by doing lump sum payments. Let's say you are able to save $1,000 a month. End of the year, you pay $12,000 towards your principal. And again, this lump sum payment goes towards your principal and none of it is paid towards interest, and you reduce the amount of interest that you owe long term. Now, I know a lot of people would already know this information, so skip to the next section. However, it's very important to understand which of these three things are the best way to pay off your mortgage. Now, everyone is different, but I'll give you my justification of which one do I use to prepay my mortgage. The first one, monthly to bi-weekly payments, I do not like. And the reason why I don't like that is because I cannot determine the date when my mortgage payment will go out from my bank account. Because it's every 14 days, the first payment will be deducted on the 1st, then 14th, then 28th, then 12th. So every time the date will change, and therefore it's very difficult to budget. The second one, increasing the monthly payments, is also not my favorite, and the reason is that portion of that goes towards principal and a lot of that goes towards interest. My personal favorite is doing lump sum deposits. Whether you do monthly or do you do one time, you always should do lump sum deposits towards your mortgage, because that goes directly to your principal and you reduce your amortization a lot faster. Now, if you ask me, mathematically speaking, the third one would make the most sense. But if you are someone who do not have the discipline to prepay your mortgage, then increasing your mortgage payments or going to bi-weekly could also be a good option. Now, let me walk you through a few scenarios in which you have to prepay your mortgage. So the first scenario is, let's say that you have $100,000 sitting in your bank account, or you have $100,000 coming from inheritance or whatever it could be, but you have $100,000 or equivalent of that. Now, let's say in the first scenario, you have to pay off your mortgage by $100,000. What you do is, I'll go to the Ramsey Solutions website, which is an amazing website. I would not recommend that you buy the house in cash like I discussed in the last video. If you're not seen that, I would highly recommend that you see that. But let's use this, calculators, because I really feel that these calculators are amazing. So let's say the original loan amount was $695,925, which was our example. Let's say you're starting the mortgage today. Today is 25th of January. So let's say 25th of January 2024. The loan amount is 25 years. The interest rate is 4%, let's say, and you confirm. I said 402,000, this says 406,000. I don't know why the discrepancy is, but it hardly matters. It's just $4,000. But what we see now is that we need to make the extra payment of $100,000, because that's the amount of money that you have for the prepayment. So you pay the $100,000, you're doing it one time, let's say one time, and you calculate the results and you see that you save about $142,000. So instead of paying $406,000 of interest over the course of 25 years, what you do is you only pay $263,000 of interest. That's $140,000 of savings that you have, which is amazing. That's a 35% saving, when you look at the interest. Not only that, but you also save about 5 years and 5 months on your mortgage. That means that you will be mortgage free in less than 20 years instead of 25 years. Now, on first look, these numbers look very, very impressive. But let's say that $100,000 is invested into S&P 500 for the next 25 years, and let's see what the numbers will be. So let's say, we go to the investment calculator. You can just go to calculator.net and do that. Let's say the starting amount of money that you are investing is $100,000. Let's say you're doing it for 25 years. You're not putting anything additional into this. It's just a one-time $100,000 that you put in S&P 500 as of today. Let's say, the average return of S&P 500 is about 8 to 10%. Let's say, very, very conservative 6% return year on year that you get for 25 years. And I hit on calculate. What you will see is that your end balance on the $100,000 will be $429,000. This is on a very, very conservative level. If you do the 8% rate of return, you'll be at $684,000, which is over $500,000 of appreciation that you get. And again, we have not put anything additional. It's just a one-time $100,000 that we put. And if you are a very, like a stock market maverick, and you are able to get a 10% return, or you invest in India, you're able to get more returns, then you will be over $1 million in end balance of the 100,000. So the investment that you made 25 years ago, which is today, let's say in 25 years, it will 10x at 10% interest rate, which is amazing. So clearly, if you do the maths on this, if you were to put $100,000 towards your mortgage, your interest savings are $142,000, and yes, you'll be mortgage free in 20 years. However, if you put the same $100,000, yes, you'll pay $142,000 of more interest on your mortgage, but even at 6% year-on-year return, you'll get a return of over $400,000. And if you're able to get a better return, you'll obviously be a lot ahead. So clearly, the maths on the lump sum deposit of $100,000, if you have that, tips in the favor of investing into S&P 500 rather than paying off your mortgage. And two other problems that I see with paying off your mortgage is that it's lack of liquidity. If you put the money in your mortgage, you can't draw that money if you need that. Now, of course, you can do HELOCs, you can do line of credits, but that again, is a process that you don't want to get into. Plus the maths doesn't make sense. So it's lack of liquidity. Plus putting everything in your primary home is lack of diversification, which I personally do not like. Now, the second scenario is where you have $500 per month of spare cash lying around where you want to put that towards your mortgage, or you need to invest that money and you are wondering what to do. And in that case, let's compare the scenarios where you do a monthly prepayment. So every month you do $500 towards your principal or $6,000 across the year, one time. Every single year you do that, or you invest that money again into S&P 500. And let's do the math on this. Now again, let's go to the Ramsey solutions, and here, instead of doing the prepayment of $100,000, we say that we are doing a $500 per month of payment, and we hit calculate, and we see that our overall interest savings on this one will be less than if you put $100,000. Of course, it will be about $84,000, which is again 21% less interest that you pay, and you are mortgage free almost in 20 years, again just over 20 years. A really good scenario. But again, let's compare this against putting this money into S&P 500, and we do that for 25 years. Again, let's say you get a 6% return, and this time what you do is you do $500 per month of contribution. You're starting with zero, but you're putting $500 per month every single month for the next 25 years, and we hit on calculate. And again, you'll see that our money has grown by a lot more than the interest savings that you have if you put this $500 per month every single month into your mortgage. Going back to the presentation, again, if you have 6% gains, then you stand to gain about $189,000 over the course of 25 years if you put the money into S&P 500, which is an entire $100,000 more than interest savings that you will have if you put the same money into your mortgage. And again, if you are a stock market maverick and you're able to get 10% plus returns, the returns on putting the money towards S&P 500, those $500 per month would give you a lot better return. Way better return than if you put that towards your mortgage. So now the question is, why do we even prepay mortgage? Why do people say that you should prepay your mortgage? And the answer is that first of all, your primary home is not an asset, and therefore the less interest that you pay on your primary home, the better it is, because it's an expense. The second reason is the moment you get mortgage free and you have a mortgage free house where you live in, you don't have to bother about the biggest expense that you have on a monthly basis, and that is mental peace. And the third reason why you would put money towards your mortgage is that it's guaranteed return. Now, I did say that S&P 500 has been giving 8 to 10% return over the last, so many years, but that's not guaranteed. If it has happened in the past, there's a high likelihood that it will happen in the future, but there's no guarantee. But if you pay your debts down, it's guaranteed return because you save 4% no matter what. Now, like I said in the beginning of the presentation, there should be some part of prepayment that we should all do. Now, me personally would want to be mortgage free by the time I'm in my early 50s, which is 15 years from now. So the question now becomes that when to start prepayment. Are you ready to make prepayments towards your house or not? And the second question is, if yes, then how much? Now let's talk about that. So when you have an emergency fund of 6 months of expenses, at least 6 months of expenses, only then you do prepayments. Do not use your emergency fund to make prepayment on your mortgage. It's not worth it. Have 6 months of expenses saved up in a high interest savings account that you do not touch, and only then you make prepayments if you have any spare cash left. And the second one, and it's not a either or, it's an and, apart from the emergency fund that you have, we need to invest 20% towards S&P 500 or into the stock market. I've made several videos on that, and the reason why you do that is for diversification and liquidity. And make sure that we are maxing out our TFSA, because that's tax-free appreciation that we can then draw when we are ready for retirement. So before you even think about prepayment, you need to have emergency fund of 6 months, and we should be investing 20% of our net income in the stock market. Now that we understand the when, let's understand the how much. And I have a personal rule for that allows me to prepay my mortgage 5 years early, which is I prepay 1% of my mortgage, which is the outstanding balance, every single year. So if I have a $600,000 mortgage, I'll pay $6,000, which is 1% of $600,000 every single year. Let's do the math on this. Again, we have about $700,000 of mortgage in our previous example. Let's say we do $7,000, which is 1% of $700,000 every single year, or you can break it up into monthly payments of $600. It's up to you. And we hit on calculate. We'll save almost $100,000 in interest, and we'll prepay our mortgage approximately 5 years earlier, and we are paying down our mortgage 21% faster. This, in my view, is a good way of looking at it. Not only do you save on interest, which is about $100,000 in this particular mortgage, but you also make sure that you keep investing into the stock market as well to get those returns that you want. I think it's a very balanced approach. However, like I said, I want to prepay my mortgage in 10 years and not 5 years, and that's where some of the advanced strategies come into play. If you remember the previous example that we have where we were comparing the stock market with, putting $100,000 towards your mortgage versus stock market, we saw that stock market clearly comes out ahead. Now let's do another math where instead of investing that $100,000 that you have into S&P 500, you invest that into appreciation real estate. What I mean by appreciation real estate is that real estate which is not necessarily done for cash flow. You probably make a little bit of negative cash flow from that in the beginning. However, you were able to buy that asset at a much lower value than its actual worth. Let's take an example of a client that bought their first home with me 2 years ago, and now they were ready to invest into their first investment property, and we made this plan for them. So right now the condo market is crazy low. People were thinking that there will be a crash that will come, and yes, the crash has come. The condo market is about 30 to 35% lower in some areas. This is a real example of one of my clients buying an investment property, 1-bedroom condo in Etobicoke for $465,000, and I have lived in this building, so I know this building is managed by one of the best management companies and it's built really well. So this purchase price was $465,000. The cash flow from this right now is about $500 per month negative. So you have negative cash flow every single month, and that's okay. And we'll talk about why that's okay in a bit. The peak comparable for this one back in March of 2022, when the peak of the market was there, is about $625,000. So we were able to buy this house about $140,000, $150,000, $160,000 lower, which is amazing. If we sell this house in 2 years or 3 years, whatever the timeline is, let's say in 2 years, the target price for this one, let's say, is the peak, which is $625,000. Now, I know that a lot of people will say that I'm making a massive assumption that the market will bounce back to the same levels that we had in 2022, but that's not an assumption founded on nothing. There is a supply shortage of homes, and there are so many people who are coming to Canada, who have come to Canada in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, if you've seen my videos in the last 6 months, I've talked about the recession, I've talked about the real estate crash that might happen. However, long term, I'm still bullish on real estate, and which is the reason why I continue to invest in real estate in Canada. Now, let's say these numbers are true and the appreciation will be about $160,000, which is from when we bought to when we are selling. The mortgage pay down on this one will be about $12,000 because every month you are paying the mortgage, and part of that mortgage, in this case, is about $500 per month, is going towards principal. So they've paid down the mortgage by about $12,000. Now, because we are selling, there will be expenses. So you have a cash flow expense of minus $12,000 because you're making $500 per month negative cash flow. Multiplied by 24 is about $12,000. So you are making $12,000 of negative cash flow on this. I just included that as a cost. Upfront, you are paying closing costs, which is another $15,000. Obviously, you made the down payment as well, but down payment is something which goes towards principal. So that's still with you. And the exit fee will be about $30,000, which includes the realtor fee, the lawyer fee, everything, when you're selling the house. And let's say overall, you make a gross profit of $115,000. And after you pay 25% in capital gain tax, you are left with about $90,000. And again, you have your original principal of about $100,000 that you paid as down payment. So overall, the money in the bank is about $200,000. And then what my client is planning to do is this $200,000, the $100,000 of appreciation and the original $100,000 that they put into the house, this they are willing to put on their primary house. Let's do the math on that again. So let's say we have the scenario where they have a $700,000 mortgage. You pay a one time of $200,000 because their house is coming for renewal. Now, of course, these are not real numbers for that particular client. I'm just continuing our previous example. Let's say they have a $700,000 outstanding balance on their house and they prepay $200,000. They refinance, they just make a prepayment and they do it, one time. If you calculate, you'll see that they are saving almost $240,000 on interest. So instead of paying $406,000 in interest, they are only paying $165,000 in interest, and they are prepaying their mortgage 10 years early. So they're saving 59% on interest, and they are going to be mortgage free in 15 years. That is strategy number one, where you double your money in 2 to 3 years because you bought an asset class which is undervalued at this moment. Now let's take another example where you have the same $100,000. Again, this is a real example of one of my clients. Again, if you are a client of ours, we will make these strategies for you so that you are able to be mortgage free or you are able to multiply your wealth. And that's one of the reasons why I always say that you should not be going for interest rates when you are looking at your mortgage for your first house, because wealth is a long-term process. If you work with a team, we'll make plans like these which will make you mortgage free very early. Now let's talk about the second scenario. Again, it's a very real scenario where one of my clients bought a duplex in Calgary. This was their second house. So the first house was their primary residence, and now last year they bought a duplex in Calgary. Now what happens here is the purchase price was about $502,000. The cash flow from year one was about $100 per month because the interest rates were pretty high last year. So it's $100 per month of negative cash flow that they incurred for 1 year. Now this year, because there is no rent control in Calgary, and they made about $10,000 to $20,000 of improvements to the house, especially to the basements, their rents will increase and now they will make at least $300 per month of cash flow. The lease is up for renewal in June this year. And every single year, because the rents will increase and because they have 2 units, the cash flow in year 2 will be higher. The cash flow in year 4 will be up to $1,200 per month. And the reason why the cash flow jumps to more than double in year 4 is because their mortgage will come for renewal and the interest rates will be a lot lower. Right now, my client has an interest rate of about 6.4 or 6.3% on this particular house for 3 years. And in 3 years, which is year number 4 in this case, we'll have the interest rates at hopefully under 4% and the rents would have increased. And if all goes well, the cash flow will be over $1,000 every single month. Now, what my client is doing is all the cash flow that he starts getting from this particular year, he'll be putting that every single month into their primary residence. So in 4 years, they'll be putting over $1,000 every single month into their primary residence and then try to prepay that mortgage early. Now let's do the maths on that. Let's say again, we have the same example of $700,000 of outstanding balance and we have about $1,200 of additional payments which is coming from the rental property, the cash flow that is coming from the rental property, and we are putting all that cash flow into our primary home every single month. Let's do the math on that. This is the monthly payment that you do. Of course, the cash flow will increase and you'll be able to prepay the house much faster. But let's say it's $1,200 and you only do $1,200, every single month. And you'll see again that your overall interest savings will be about $155,000 in this case. And again, you'll be prepaying the mortgage almost 9 years early. And if you do a little bit more prepayment because the cash flow will increase in year 5, year 6, year 7, my client will be mortgage free in less than 15 years. So that's $150,000 plus of interest savings and mortgage free in 15 years again. And not only that, the Calgary house is still there and it's worth a lot more than what they bought. They did not refinance it. So Calgary duplex will be worth almost $900,000. I've just taken a 3 to 4% appreciation every single year, which is very conservative for Canada. And the cash flow will be over $3,000 per month. And this will still be there and you'll be mortgage free in 15 years. There's no mortgage on the primary house. And they're still getting $3,000 per month in monthly cash flow, and their overall net worth has increased because they have a mortgage-free primary residence and they have an investment property which is worth a lot more than what they bought it at. I hope you liked this video. If you did, do hit the like button. And I really feel that people complicate real estate a lot. You don't have to complicate real estate. If you look at my previous video as well, you don't have to buy, and keep buying investment properties, like to eternity. You only need 2 or 3 investment properties to do all of what we discussed today. What's important is either you are able to do those numbers for yourself or you work with a team who is able to build that plan for you. And that way we all grow together into financial independence. That's all I have for today. मिलते हैं अगली वीडियो में, तब तक के लिए bye bye.